Hi there and welcome to today's episode of Along the Towpath. Today I am joined by Russell Quirk. Russell is a highly controversial figure in the industry, but I'm delighted to say today that he managed to keep most of that back, most of it. Enjoy the episode. So Russell Quirk, good morning.
Yes,
Welcome.
or mooring.
That's
I
great.
guess.
only a man in PR can come up with a line like that immediately.
No, look, thanks for having me. This is different.
Yeah, well, welcome to the Towpath. So I was really keen to get you on, and I think we've struggled to get you booked in because you are literally one of the busiest people in the industry.
Well, I have a bit going on
in some fashion or another.
Yeah. I purposely keep myself busy.
Yeah.
At 58 as I am, I should be thinking about retirement, but frankly, I can't think of anything worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're keeping yourself that busy, then retiring sounds like it's a bit of a swear word, isn't it? So just for those who don't know, just introduce yourself. What's your name? Where'd you come from?
So I'm Russell Quirk. I'm a property guy, I guess, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago, though, I set up a PR agency called Proper PR, which is a property industry focused PR agency.
Mm-hmm.
So using kind of 25 years house building estate agency experience, along with my business partner James Lockett, who is the guy that's actually qualified in PR,
Nice.
and putting kind of his experience and his skill set and mine together and doing PR, which means a whole bunch of different things, for estate agents, house builders, mortgage brokers, mortgage lenders and so on. So that's the kind of profession. I'm also a bit political, which you might want to go into a little bit. So
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm an elected councillor and only just, so I won a by-election in October 2025.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And might have, if you want to probe this, might have some political ambitions over and above being a councillor. I don't know, we'll see.
I had heard.
Yeah, look, we'll see.
We'll
And
no
what
doubt
else?
talk about that.
Family man. So my family is absolutely my kind of North Star in terms of everything I do genuinely is to make sure that they're supported, looked after, and they have the kind of, the best life possible. I genuinely am inspired and driven by that. And I'm a car guy.
Yeah.
I love cars, a particular kind of car, actually.
Anyone in particular?
Porsches. It's
okay.
just, my absolute passion. Why? Condor man. Okay.
That wasn't a sentence I was expecting today.
When
but
I
go on.
was about 12 or 13, a movie came out which was about a kind of a silly spy. It's a bit of an Austin Powers thing, but before Austin Powers. And the lead in it was Michael Crawford. Do you remember Frank Spencer?
Yeah.
And I think, because he was completely typecast, he decided, hang on, I need to do something a little bit different. So
Okay.
I'll do a kind of silly super spy movie. Anyway, the baddies in that film all had black Porsche 911s. And I still remember to this day that kind of feeling that I got when I saw these cars in this car chase kind of scene. And I don't know why, it's just stuck with me ever since, that they are just the most beautiful looking sounding cars that you can buy. And then, heritage and, just the sexiness of them really. So where I've been able to over the last few years, I've kind of bought and sold a few, accumulated a few, and I've kind of started a kind of side endeavour, I suppose, off the back of a YouTube channel I started in 2024 called Porschenomics, which is Porschenomics, yeah.
Okay.
All about the cars from an investment and a numbers perspective, kind of road tests and stuff like that. So it started off as a bit of a hobby. Might do something more with it now in terms of it being an actual business.
I was going to say, that sounds like a great way to avoid retirement.
Yeah. Well, look, what do they say about, you never work a day in your life if you do a job that you love, and that is very much a mantra that I aspire to. So, yeah, we're doing a big event at Goodwood, Goodwood Motor Circuit on July the 4th. So the Porschenomics at Goodwood event, which will be about 1,000 people, 600 or 700 Porsches, use of the track, blah, blah, blah. So that's my advert. Thank you.
Well done you.
Tickets are available at Porschenomics.com.
There we go. Oh, God, yeah, we'll link in the comments and all that sort of stuff. Well, that's great. Straight off the bat, we know that you identify with Bond villains, which is great news.
Yeah.
So, we've now got a theme.
Which won't surprise anyone.
So let's just talk. So I think there's an awful lot that people will know you from in terms of seeing you in various different guises and the history and things. Let's get the ugly stuff out of the way. So, as we were talking earlier, what I really, really liked is you said something just before we started, which was people always remember the negative. They always remember the rubbish. They celebrate your failures. So let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
So I suppose, really one of the things you're most known for is eMove, yeah?
Yep.
So talk us through that little ugly episode, and then I want to focus on how you turn that into a positive.
Can we talk about the good bits of eMove first?
You talk about whichever bits of it you like. I'm sure you'll find a way to make it look good.
I think in the first kind of 8 years of eMove, so eMove was a 9-year project, really. Obviously, the last year was kind of characterised by the failure of eMove, the fact that we went into administration, the fact that it went bust. And, that I think to the glee, to your point, of lots and lots of people in the industry that really kind of were enthusiastic and excited and happy about the fact that I'd failed, because I was a bit gobby. I was very, very gobby about the failings of the estate agency industry, and
which were
service levels, reputation, complaints. At the time I banged on about fees being too high, even though actually UK estate agency fees, of course, are amongst the lowest in the world. But that was a kind of a persona, I suppose, that I chose and selected back then, because
character.
Yeah, a little bit, because of course, look, the business was based on fixed fee, low cost estate agency, commoditisation, what I called at the time the Amazonification of estate agency. So that was the idea.
So did you genuinely believe that, though?
Yeah, I did. I believed that we could deliver as adequate a service, I think that's the word, as most regular estate agents for much less money. I concede, and I particularly concede now, that good estate agents should and can and could charge much, much more than perhaps they do, and the average.
Agents.
Yeah, good agents, yeah. But we can have a debate about what a good agent looks like. How many, as a percentage of UK agents, are good and how many are not. Anyway, but the good things about eMove were, I started eMove off the back of a business I sold in traditional estate agency, a business called Quirk, which I set up with my cousin in 1999. We expanded that to 6 offices very successfully until 2008-9. We then split because we just had a difference of opinion. I went my way, he went his way. And are we stopping? Oh, my goodness.
We will do, actually, because last time we ended up forcing them all in a hedge. So we'll probably keep this in, actually, because Toby Martin referred to it.
This is the local nursery school coming along.
It was.
And I think this is a test, actually, isn't it, Ross? That you want to see what I do to these poor children.
Push them.
And you see if they all start
Hold up
crying
to the
as they
bottom of
walk
it.
past me.
Well, look, the water isn't boiling yet, so we're not too bad.
Hey, guys.
Good morning. Hello.
Hiya.
Hello.
Hello.
Nobody cried.
No crying. No crying at all. So, So anyway, off the back of selling my part of that business in 2008, 2009, I'd had this thing in my head about what was happening in all other industries, really. So particularly travel. You remember lastminute.com?
Yes.
And obviously Amazon was kind of coming to the fore, and the internet was starting to promote and facilitate this kind of commoditisation of everything, whether it be travel, financial services, retail, whatever. I thought, well, maybe estate agency is no different. If I can be one of the first, and I thought I was the first, and I was certainly one of the first 2 or 3, I thought...
There's quite a few people who claim to be the first.
Well, House Network actually were first. Adam at Hatched, he was a bit before me, and then it was then I was third. But genuinely at the time, when I was planning this business back in 2006, I didn't know that there was anybody else out there that was doing kind of low-cost, fixed-fee, online estate agency. So anyway, started the business, and then literally I started it from my lounge with a laptop.
As all best agencies and businesses are.
Yeah, and with not that much money. I think I'd sold my portion of the Quirk business for, low tens of thousands of pounds. I had a bit of money in the bank, but not loads. I think I had about 60 or 70 grand to my name, if I'm honest. So I was committing that to the business, but at the same time, obviously having to, look after the family. My wife and I, we'd had a daughter only 15 months previously, and then had twins.
Oh, wow.
So 3 daughters under the age of 15 months at the same time as starting a business from my lounge and not having that much money to my name. So
there's pressure and then there's pressure.
well,
isn't there?
yeah, I guess, yeah, pressure, but kind of self-imposed pressure. But I was excited about the prospect, but I was also very passionate about it. But there was also a survival element. You know, I've got to do something now, haven't I, that allows me to earn a living. And here's the thing, with eMove, it was all about a check. It was all about growing that business and either selling it to a Countrywide or a Fox.
Focus on the exit.
Yeah,
Okay.
or it was going to be listing it on the stock exchange, which we nearly did at the end of 2018, very nearly. So anyway, there were loads of successes around that business, including the fact that we grew it to the point where we were listing 1,000 homes a month,
Goodness me.
which is decent volume.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
we were in
yeah.
the top 10 of
How many
estate
agents did you have, did you say?
So we had 40 or so agents that were, I guess, what you would call regular estate agents out on the streets, field agents.
And that was your typical self-employed type model that were all out in the field and
You will actually,
sending stuff in,
we
or?
initially employed them. Low
Okay.
basic, big commission.
Okay.
We also then had varying points. In fact, at one point, when we did the merger that we did with Tepelo and urban.co.uk, and we absorbed the Tepelo business into eMove, we had over 100 staff out of offices in London. So there were some real successes with it in terms of traction, brand. You know, I think the eMove brand, I think we did very, very well to promote that as pretty much a household name, but with a much, much less and lower budget than the likes of Purple Bricks and others. So anyway, loads of success, raised loads of money. We raised £27 million in venture funding, which I did entirely on my own.
What year was it?
Between 2013 and 2017, so 4
So
years.
it doesn't feel like a very long time ago, but it really is. You know, when we look at the optics of COVID and all those sorts of things, it's actually a lot further ago.
Yeah,
so
I
that
guess.
sort of raised back then.
And it was not what I intended. I thought I'd raise my first round, which was £500,000 from James Kahn, you know, from Dragon's
Yeah,
Den.
yeah, yeah.
So he was my first investor, and a few other guys that he knew. And I thought, well, that would be enough to get me to a point where we can sell the business for 10 million quid. I still own 30 or 40% of it. I'll take 3 or 4 million quid off the table. 4 or 5 years in, job done.
Yeah.
It didn't work out like that. It turned out that because I was so noisy and gobby from a PR perspective, the consequence of that was that lots of other people thought, this online estate agency thing seems pretty good. So before I
you
knew it,
opened the door.
completely. So we went from the three of us, the kind of hatched House Network, eMove, and then Purple Bricks, who came along in 2014. When we counted, thinking whenever it was, 2015, 16, there were over 50 online estate agents.
Wow, goodness
50.
me.
So all nibbling at the same pot, the same pie in terms of market share, but also all raising money. So I would go into an investor meeting and say, I'm trying to raise £5 million and I'll give you X percent of the business. And the investors, whoever, whether it be a high net worth individual, whether it was a bank or typically a venture capital fund or a kind of private equity house, they would say, well, we had House Network in yesterday. We had Yopa in the day before. Purple Bricks were in the day before that. And tomorrow we're seeing House Network. Why should we give you the 5 million? And it was.
So it's a beauty parade of
But it was
brokerages,
incredibly
or
tough, incredibly tough.
agents, yeah.
So, and then obviously roll forward to the end of 2018. We did the merger deal with Tepelo, which was funded by Richard Desmond, who was Channel 5 and Daily Express. He reneged on the amount of money that he was going to give us. He did that 2 days before completion, knowing that we'd bled dry and we'd run out of money. So when we had to then do the deal and complete, we had many millions of pounds less to fund then that business going forward than our plan had allowed
So
for.
your runway completely dried
Hardly
up
any
at that
runway.
point.
And then everyone kind of turned their backs and said, okay, well, if this isn't going to work out, we'll all move on as investors. The kind of venture capital principle, which was very much, well, we invest in 10 businesses, we know 3 are going to succeed, 3 are going to do okay, and the rest will fail. You're obviously going to be one of the ones that fails. And they kind of shrugged off, that loss and moved on. And I then had to kind of steward the business right to the end. And on December the 4th, 2018, I had to call the administrators in. So,
And that's not an easy thing to do.
It wasn't a great day. Well, no. And particularly because you worry about the staff and the investors and the people you owe money to. But also I had to, again, then think, well, what am I going to do for a living? How am I going to...
Because you're still a person at the end of the day. You're still a human being. You've still got a family. You've still got people that you're responsible for and accountable to by virtue of,
I had 3 young daughters. I mean, at that time they were 5, 6 years old. All 3 of them in private prep school. And my wife, on December the 5th, 2018, looking at me across the breakfast table and said, can we afford to pay the school fees next month? And I had to think, wow, can we? well, yeah, we might be okay this time, but I think next term, no, probably not. So, so again, the survival instinct then kicks in. I know I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for me.
No,
I
but I
rolled
think
a
it's
dice.
important.
I rolled a dice, and
Yeah.
it was up to me. And okay, we had a board that kind of controlled the business,
Yeah.
but I'd started the business. I chose to raise money. I chose to try and go big, and it didn't work out. But you know what? I've got no regrets whatsoever.
I think that, again, it's not about feeling sorry for it. It's about the sort of human element. And a lot of what we talk about is the challenges involved in going self-employed or taking a leap of faith or make that difficult first step, isn't it, of doing something beyond
Having the bollocks.
A little bit, yeah.
Having the bollocks.
So you found yourself in a position where you were sat around the breakfast table, and we've spoken to other people who've been in a similar situation, and I've been in business and had to have similar conversations before as to whether or not we actually have a very sensible chat about whether we continue. Not this one, thankfully, but a previous business. And you do find yourself, don't you, where you sit there sometimes looking in a mirror and you decide whether or not are you making the right choices? So what would talk us through that specific moment, that process about how you sat there with your wife and you said, I don't know if we're going to be able to pay the school fees.
So
what was the process after that?
So always have a plan
How
B.
did you turn it around? Well, there we go.
Always have a plan B. So
What was your plan B?
So my plan B was the PR agency.
Did you always have it, or did you always have a plan B, or did you come up with it on the spot?
If we dig into kind of the last few weeks, probably the last few months. So we did the Tepelo deal, I think it was June, July 2018. Realised probably August, September that we weren't going to have enough money to take us through. But I then went into overdrive, trying to raise money elsewhere, trying to sell the business. So we talked to all sorts of estate agency businesses and brands that people would know about whether they would come in and buy the business, buy the tech, buy the data, buy the brand, and so on. So that was kind of, I had I guess a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. I mean, seriously, in terms of all the different stakeholders, all the different entities I was talking to. I tried to flip the business into a SaaS business, so I tried to turn it into a software CRM business. My board didn't want to do that. Tried to do all sorts of things. So I really fought hard to pivot to try and save the business right up until the day before we went into administration. But in the few weeks before, just because I thought, although it's not inevitable and I was still fighting hard, I needed to, almost for my own mental health, I suppose, I had to have an alternative kind of backup that I knew that if it did go wrong, and I didn't think it necessarily would, but it was looking increasingly likely, I had to have a backup.
So to fall back on.
Yeah, and that backup was that one of the glowing successes out of eMove was our PR, and the fact that we'd taken PR in-house. We had sacked, I think, 4, maybe 5 different PR agencies that they just couldn't keep up with the speed at which I wanted to kind of churn PR releases out. They weren't very creative in terms of coming up with content ideas. They weren't very pushy in terms of making me kind of, get onto the sofa in a TV studio frequently enough or in front of a mic frequently enough. And of course, as everybody knows, I'm no stranger to doing that as a media whore before you say it.
I've got it written down somewhere.
So I thought, well, hang on a sec. If that PR endeavour has been successfunnel for us as a brand, and it had been significantly, and no one else was really doing what
And you
we
were the
were
driving
doing.
force behind it rather
Yeah,
than
me and
outsourcing
James.
it.
So literally, in fact, funny enough, we hired Lucy Milne, who was the marketing director from Just Eat, and she was absolutely fantastic, very, very good at brand and also performance marketing, but not a PR. So I said, okay, you run the marketing then, so you take the budget, you do what you need to do in terms of pushing brand and customer acquisition. I'll do the PR with James. And so we had this almost separate kind of relationship where James and I would sit down every morning and say, right, what we're doing today, and we'd say, tell you what, let's do this idea. Let's get a bit of research behind it, a bit of data, turn it into a story, issue a press release out to the Times, the Telegraph, the BBC, Sky, and so on. And we absolutely smashed it. I mean, in 2018, on our own, just the two of us, we achieved nearly 2,000 pieces of press for eMove in just that 12-month period.
Goodness.
So that then, when sometimes, you talk about kind of having these moments, you have to kind of close your eyes, close your ears, stop all the noise sometimes and think, right, I need a bit of peace here to think about what the hell I'm going to do. And it kind of came to me as a bit of an obvious thing, I suppose, as it now turns out to be, but maybe it wasn't quite so obvious at the time, was that if we've been so successful doing PR for ourselves, why don't we just apply the same model and the same ethos for other people?
But do it as an
Yeah.
outsourced
So
service.
did a reach out on LinkedIn, immediately had a couple of people come back and say, yeah, we're looking for a PR agency. And I said, well, look, I don't have an agency as such, but I'd like to test what we've done for ourselves on you.
Okay.
And so we did. And for those 2 brands, this was right at the end of 2018, that was successful. So by the time 4 or 5 weeks later, we called in the administrators at eMove, the plan B was not just a plan B, it was something that I'd already kind of kicked the tyres on and tested. And again, I had to do that for my own.
Something that.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was
was a
going to be
thing.
successful, and I didn't really have any money to put into it, nor did James. So it was another leap of faith. But again, it was my instinct at the time was, apart from the fact that I think this will be successful because we've done this for 4 or 5 years for ourselves, but it was another survival thing whereby I thought, well, if I don't do this, what am I going to do? I'm either going to try and work for somebody, which would be a nightmare for me and for them, probably. Can't do that. Or what do? Do I do what some people do, which is to sit in the corner of a darkened room with a can of special brew and,
Blame everybody else for your troubles.
yeah, and just, rock myself to sleep in a drunken haze every night and go, oh, well, it's not my fault. I thought, no, you have to pick yourself up, get back on the bike, as they say. And so, probably for the second time in 10 years, I did that, formed the PR agency with James, and we're now 8 years on. And I know this isn't an advert for proper PR, but it's been an incredible success, as in clients, revenue, margin, profit. And we do some fantastic work now, achieving about 10,000 pieces of press every year as a consequence of that original decision for those clients. So it's great. So to answer the question, kind of how do you deal with it? You've got to have that plan B and that hope, I suppose, that there's an open door somewhere.
I think that the reason I asked the question and I push for it is that there's a lot of people questioning what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
And whether or not they're in the right place.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are, I explained to you before we started, the 3 of us before we started Chartwell Noble was, Christ, are we doing the right thing? Are we in the right industry?
Yeah.
It's tough out there, isn't it? And frankly, a lot of people are burnt out. It's a horrible phrase, isn't it? But there's a lot of people who are just simply fed up. And they're out of answers. And it is such a difficult industry right now to be a part of, as a business owner or otherwise, that actually all is not lost.
No, it's not, and I don't think it's that bad at all. I think the market could be a whole lot worse. I mean, given without getting into the kind of politics of the UK economy right now.
We're avoiding politics, Russell. This is a first.
Only if you want me to. But the property market generally, unless you're right at the top, if you're selling in Belgravia, Mayfair, Kensington, Knightsbridge at 5, 10, 20, 30 million quid, it's a tough market in terms of transactional volumes and values for sure. But from what I see in the regular market, the stuff under $1 million throughout the country, given that money is cheap, we've had 4 or 5 successive interest rate reductions.
Yeah, potentially another one on the way.
Yeah, another one on the way now that inflation's dropped. Unemployment, yes, it's bubbling upwards, but it's 5%, not 10% of the population. So actually, the property market, I think, has responded in a very resilient way, and that then feeds through to, I think, the success and the kind of the commercial kind of benefit to the industry and to estate agents, where I think it could be a lot worse. So I think actually making a move to do your own thing, whether that's with a shop front or as a self-employed estate agent, I think now is not the worst time to be doing it for sure. Really but I think the interesting thing is there'll be people watching this and listening to this thinking, well, it's just not for me, this kind of self-employed thing, or going out on my own, or starting a business or investing into a business. And for some people maybe that's true, but I think there's nothing like working for yourself, but you've got to have passion and enthusiasm for the industry and the sector. Self-starter, discipline, be realistic about how much money it's going to cost you, realistic about how much money you've got in the bank to see you through. I mean, to me, there's nothing like it. But then I'm completely unemployable, so I couldn't go back and work for anybody anyway. So, but I wish people would have a go, I suppose. This risk thing, this UK kind of attitude, which is failure is terminal, failure is scary. I can't look my friends or my family or the mums and dads at the school gates in the eye if I mess it up. I mean, fuck that. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear.
You can say whatever you like.
Just have a go, right? Because I'm proof. I'm proof that you can have a catastrophic failure and be humiliated in the trade press for days and weeks on end. I still am, actually, in the comment section of Property Industry Eye and so on. But it doesn't kill you. I mean, so what? And you know what? I know it's a cliche, but if you don't have a go, you don't buy a ticket to the lottery as such, well, you're never going to win it, are you? So you're never going to see that success, that upside. Honestly, here's another cliche. What's the worst that can happen? You fail. Get over it. And then actually what you should do, like I did, I took a whole bunch of learnings from the failure of eMove, a whole load of things. I thought, well, I'm not doing that again. I definitely won't do that way. I mean, I definitely won't have investors, for instance. I definitely won't have a board full of alpha males that have got, IQs of 170 and all went to Oxford and Cambridge who knew absolutely fuck all about the business that they were in. Won't make that mistake again. So failure, genuinely, a bit like the US attitude, leads to success. You can't really get to that success without kind of pushing the envelope and knowing kind of how failure feels and how it manifests itself. But we don't have that attitude in the UK. I know that when eMove failed, there were hundreds and thousands of agents saying, yeah, great, he's failed. Fucking hated that bloke. Well, hang on a sec.
You use that as fuel.
It doesn't bother me.
Or?
Yeah, kind of fuel, I suppose. But I'd already created this pantomime villain persona anyway by prodding and having a go at the industry.
We had the car for it.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't bother me because I guess I was expecting it. But yeah, just shrug it off. I mean, if anyone is interested in the stuff, you've got to read books like Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed, just as an example, which talks about failure throughout the careers of people like James Dyson and the Mercedes Formula One team and the Sky cycling team. They built themselves on purposeful failure. Now, I didn't purposely fail at eMove, didn't really mean to. I quite like to have had a nice big check out of it. But ultimately, it's part of the journey that's got me to where I am now. And honestly, Ross, I'm genuinely the happiest I've ever been in my life right now. I mean, not just now because I'm with you.
Well, I don't know.
Don't get the wrong idea.
Dual carriageways, what's not to like?
Canals, what's not to like? Graffiti. I can't believe there's graffiti in Worcestershire.
Yeah, even farmers have canals.
So from what was a very bleak and dark time, with my wife Carolina looking across the breakfast table saying, how are we going to live? How are we going to pay this, that and the other? We're doing all right. So maybe if I hadn't had that failure, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. Maybe I'd be working in Countrywide as a regional manager, wanting to take an overdose of sleeping pills every day.
Just take a step back then. So we just talked about failure and I want to talk about success. And
that's a cheerier subject.
Well, it is a little, isn't it? And I think, whilst everybody's quite happy to, as you say, comment section of Property Industry Eye, and, it's all great fun sitting there poking at people and saying, and let's be honest, you enjoy the sport, don't you? So, I suspect it doesn't keep you up at
in
night.
my quieter moments, if I'm honest, and especially politically on Twitter or X, whatever it's called this week, I do sometimes reply and do sometimes throw a grenade back and think, okay, let's have a bit of fun with this then. Yeah, if the mood takes me, it's therapy, isn't it? It's funny.
Well, I suppose it depends on how thick your skin is, isn't it? And
well, yeah.
I think if you're a sensitive soul like some of us, then putting your head above a parapet.
But it's also prepared, but I'll often. I mean, I don't do it on Property Industry Eye very often. I mean, it will be months before I might actually reply. But if I do, I'm doing it to make myself laugh because often my response is very dry and sarcastic. It's not always accepted by others as being sarcastic and tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, I do it just to amuse myself, really. But that's that.
Again, using it as therapy.
This weird head of mine. Yeah.
Let's talk about. So, of the 10, 1 didn't go so well, but 9 did. So you mentioned that earlier.
Of companies that I've started. Yeah.
So you mentioned about in the US, people are happy to promote, push, and celebrate successes and encourage, almost not encourage failure, but not see it as the enemy. But in the UK, we don't.
Yeah, see it as the path.
In the UK, we're not very nice to each other, are we, really? So it tends to be a thing.
Well, we gloat in the UK.
Yeah, a little bit.
We like other people to fail. But then, even though we don't want other people to succeed, we'll still go out and buy a lottery ticket ourselves so that we ourselves succeed. Bit hypocritical, isn't it?
At the expense of others.
Yeah. So
talk us through the successes then. So what's the thing that you've been the most proud of? You say you're the happiest you've ever been, and life is good, and you've got some great things going on. And it doesn't have to be property; it could be anything, couldn't it? But what are your successes? What's the one you are the most proud of?
Well, look, family has to be the number one, doesn't it? I don't know. Again, it's a cliche because you're supposed to say family, aren't you? You're supposed to say that.
A little bit. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
But despite what people might think of me and my kind of cantankerous, I don't know, the whole pantomime villain persona, being a bit messed up, whatever people think of me. My kids, of which I have 4, I have an older son who's in his early 30s, I've got 3 daughters, Kaya who's 17 and Rosie and Lily who are twins who are 16, so those, the aforementioned kind of 15 months apart thing.
Right. Okay.
They are all very, very rounded, sensible, smart, nice kids. Remarkable, isn't it? And none of them really
Is it because they couldn't get a word in?
Well, maybe it could be that, but yeah, probably. No, but none of them are yet displaying any Russell traits, which I think is to their considerable betterment. And maybe they've just ended up like their mothers. 2 mothers. Sorry, long story. Okay. Son from a previous relationship, 3 girls from my 18-year marriage to Carolina. So that's definitely a success. And one of them plays paddle for Great Britain at the age of 16, which is amazing.
That's incredible, isn't it?
The other 2 are very, very academic. They go to grammar school, and I'm just desperately proud of them. Really proud of them. So, family, I think, look, it genuinely is, as I said earlier on, my kind of guiding light, really, and the thing that is what I do everything for. But in terms of business, I mean, the PR business for sure is the most successful business, I think, that I've had, particularly because obviously James and I started it from scratch. We've managed through kind of having sharp elbows and lots of networking and lots of hard work and great content and output. We've managed to attract and retain lots and lots of clients, and we've got a business now that does well over £1 million in revenue every year. Very, very profitable.
That's fantastic.
We don't borrow money. We don't have other investors. That's all good. But in the past, I mean, the estate agency business that I started in 1999 in Billericay in Essex with my dad, where we bought a very downtrodden traditional estate agency branch, which was run by a guy that was a friend of my dad and his brothers. And let's just say that business, and a bit like the individual involved, had seen better days.
Right.
Let's say that particular individual might have spent a bit more time in the Red Lion than he did behind his desk.
There's a few of those in the industry.
Yeah, so 1999, that business came up for sale. We bought it for 30 grand, and roll forward, I mean, to try and make the long story much, much shorter, roll forward 3 or 4 years, and I then managed to persuade my cousin Anthony, who's a very well-known estate agent in Essex, to come into the business. So it's 3 of us. And we ended up expanding to 6 traditional estate agency branches across South Essex. Okay. And we're doing great revenue, employing 50 or 60 people. We were number 1 in most of the markets that we operated in, the likes of Basildon, Grays, Stamford Le Hope, Canvey Island. In fact, Anthony's only just sold the Canvey Island branch that we opened together 26 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And still the number 1 business in... or on, you're supposed to say, on Canvey Island. So that, I think I'd have to concede, is a success. I sold my part of that business. I've only had 1 business go bust, by the way. And out of all the others, we've...
So statistically speaking.
Yeah, we dabbled in house building, so we built some houses and bungalows, Anthony and I, a business called Partner Homes. We got involved in property recruitment back in the day because we were... Again, don't tell Josh Rayner this, but we were pissed off paying lots and lots of money to recruiters. So we thought, sod it, we'll do it ourselves. So we did. Property people, see what we did there? Sold that business. Lots of property-related businesses that I and others, and this is the benefit of having great partners, have started, built, and exited, and enjoyed the kind of ride doing it,
Okay, so... That's great, and it's lovely to hear, especially the variety of things as well. I think it's quite interesting, isn't it, seeing all the different ways that you can explore opportunity.
Yeah.
But we mentioned earlier that you have a number of connections and contacts, Josh, and obviously the other Russell, of
in
course.
property particularly, you mean?
In property in particularly.
Yeah.
And I think something I'd like to explore is, you're in PR, you make sure that you're as visible as you possibly can be. Here's a question. How visible do you think you really are in the industry? How many people do you think, what percentage of the industry actually know who Russell Quirk is?
I've got absolutely no idea. But I guess my quest in my kind of endeavours and my activities to be seen and to network and so on is I don't have to be well known to everybody. I want to be seen to be, credible and a personality, and particularly now in terms of the whole kind of PR business, our kudos and our expertise in PR, that really only needs to be seen by decision makers. So, the fact that there might be branch managers, listers, negs, people in admin or whatever that are aware of who I am because of things like this or because of me writing for Property Industry Eye or whatever, that's all great. But I've never sought property fame as such. The reason I wanted to make myself, I suppose, well known by way of exposure in the e-move business was because that was the way to get into the trade press, then the national press, then onto telly,
Push,
and
promote,
to radio,
drive,
and it worked.
raise the profile
That then opened the door to political commentary, me presenting shows on Talk for people like Jeremy Kyle and Julia Hartley-Brewer and Ian Collins and Kevin O'Sullivan and so on. So it opened the door to that stuff. So I created noise around myself for the purposes of eMove and its branding, I suppose, originally. And since then, it's really been about networking. I mean, I'm very well networked. I go to lots of stuff, I know lots of people, I mingle, I put myself out there, to have a bit of personality and character. So I think, if there's 100 property decision maker types in the industry, if there are 100.
Those are the people you want to be known by.
Yeah, and I think I would say probably 80 or 90% of them either know me well or at least know who I am. And honestly, here's a little secret. Most of the business we get as a PR agency comes through not our website, not through Google Ads, not through third-party marketing. It comes to me directly through LinkedIn.
Isn't that interesting?
80%.
And again, that's sort of building your own little ecosystem, isn't it?
But back to the point about enjoying what you do, I genuinely enjoy it. So whether it's going and doing something that is, I don't know, hosting a panel or speaking on stage or just having drinks after the Women in Estate Agency Conference, which is coming up soon, by the way. Buy your ticket, I have. Or EA Masters or Voice of the Agent, whatever. The conversations, the drinking, the messing about, the banter.
It's all part of it, isn't it?
It is all part of it. Yeah. But you know what? Business gets done. And every now and again, I end up round a table with Matt Giggs and Simon Whale and Verona Frankish and Kirsty Franks or whoever. And you end up putting the industry to rights, and that sometimes is recorded, sometimes it's not. And there's, I think, a genuine ambition by many people at the top of the industry to try and improve marketing or lead nurture or technology or fees or perception by the public, all of those things. And I think it's fair to say I'm part of that clique that, even though I know I can be outspoken and I know that not everybody agrees with everything I say all the time, my intentions are genuine. So when I say, if you said to me, do you think UK estate agency is generally a bit shit? I will say yes. Generally, not all, not everyone.
How many people do you think would disagree with you on that?
Most, because they're estate agents watching this that don't want to be defined as not being very good.
I mean, they don't want the perception of it, but I think most people would agree that if they have 4 or 5 competitors, 3 of those are probably pretty shit.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the vast majority.
Exactly. So it's going to be at least 3/4 of the industry.
There you go.
Thinks that 3/4 of the industry is rubbish.
But to get the industry to actually admit that they themselves could do better, I mean that's a hard psychological thing to do. But I would challenge people to do what I've done, which is to jump on a plane, go to the United States seriously, and go to a Keller Williams or an EXP conference or the National Association of Realtors conference, and not so much sit there, being fascinated by whoever they've got on stage, Josh Fegan, or they've got, Tony Robbins on, great. Not that. Talk to agents.
The actual specific agents themselves as to what good looks like.
Yeah, and do you know what? In the US, what is incredible is that they will talk to you at the drop of a hat about success, lead nurture, customer service, perception by the public, but also about how much they bill. And they're not saying it to show off, like, hey, Ross, I did $1 million last year. What did you do?
I did
1.2.
Them, isn't it?
They go, I mean, quick story. We're probably going to run out of time here. At a Keller Williams conference.
We don't have film anymore, so it's not like we're going to run out of film.
Okay, good. Batteries, whatever. I was at a Keller Williams conference a few years ago, and I was in the queue, or in the line, as they say in the US, waiting to go and see Gary Keller himself speak on stage. And the lady in front of me, whose name was Kyle Zimmerman, who's since passed away, unfortunately, she was on her own. I was there with, I think, Mark Reddings, Claire Reddings, and a few others. I got talking to her. And she said, "Oh, you're from the UK, great, yeah, I heard that Keller Williams were now in the UK." And I said, yeah, we've just started, it's all great, great to be here. So where are you from? And she said, "I'm from Albuquerque." And I went, "Oh, great, fantastic. I think I've seen that on the telly, the whole kind of Breaking Bad thing and all that, ha, ha, ha." Anyway, she then says to me, embarrassed, as we got onto the question of metrics, she said, "Yeah, I only did $350,000 last year." She said, "I'm not one of the big guys." And I said, "Kyle, can I just tell you, if you were in the United Kingdom right now doing £270,000, $350,000, you would be one of the highest paid estate agents in the country."
But that's at 6% versus our 1.
Well, 3 and 3. That's 3%, because they get 3 as the seller, 3 as the buyer.
Okay.
But here's my challenge to the estate agency industry. This difference in fees between, let's say, the 3% that's charged on the buy or the sell side in the US, or indeed just about any other country, by the way, continental Europe, Australia, anywhere else, apart from here, where most agents are lucky to get 1%. That perception is just a perception. It's a construct, isn't it? So,
absolutely.
I mean, how do Foxtons get 2.5% when a lesser agent in London, an independent, I say lesser in terms of size, can only muster 0.5%? Why do we think that is?
Mindset, is it?
It's mindset, isn't it? And look, backup, quality, brand, QDOS, it's a whole bunch of other things. But my point is, we've got to stop moaning about the fact that we only get 1%. You can't use the Americans as a comparison because, well, the Americans are 3 plus 3 for good reason, because presumably they command that QDOS on the basis of they can justify it. They justify it by their performance, by the service they provide, the fact that they'll reply to a WhatsApp message at 10 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock in the morning, the fact that they, make sure that they accompany every viewing, they do show homes, they stage properties, and they're brilliant on social media, by the way, which we're starting to get, but we are not there yet. So stop making excuses for the fact that we're not very good, either at service or exceeding customer expectation or indeed fees, and do something about it.
Stop blaming everybody else.
Yeah, it's psychological.
Have a plan.
Have a plan, just be better. Just be better, go above and beyond. And I know, look, it's tough, right? So, okay, we're going to be the only agent in the high street that charges 2.5% and does this, this and this, only 4 weeks sole agency. We don't overvalue. We sell ourselves on our performance, the fact we sell 85% of everything we list, and we get 96.5% of asking price, whatever those things are, or we're 24/7, or we accompany every viewing, or whatever those things are. We'll do it, because eventually, if you push those things, surely you're going to be able to command a higher fee. And then all of a sudden we get out of this fucking death spiral.
It's common sense, isn't it? I mean, so you say that you go and have a catch up with Matt Giggs, Josh and Verona, and you all sit there and you put the world to rights and you discuss what the industry could look like, what the future could look like. So what does the future of the industry look like? Because you're may surprise people, you're not afraid of giving an opinion on these sorts of things.
Yeah.
What does the future of the industry look like? What disruption is there? You're a fan of disruption, clearly, eMove being the sort of the beginning of that.
Yeah.
What does the future industry look like? AI and self-employed agency models and fees going up, fees going down, portal wars of all different sizes and shapes.
Yeah,
what's it going to look like?
I think
it's a big question.
Yeah, it is. I think a lot has been said about the technology element and AI. I think that AI obviously has a part to play, particularly when it comes to the mundane stuff, whether it be booking viewings or viewing follow-ups, whether it be helping write descriptions, whether it be
and that's all on the
automatically
all the CRMs
automatically kind of editing photographs, that kind of stuff. Kind of chat facilities, all of that stuff. And I think actually the big thing that hasn't been explored yet, although I know that there are some people doing this, like Heather at Street and others, where Mark Burgess, where leads are concerned and how leads are not just generated but nurtured and brought to the boil as such. I think that there's a lot more that is going to be done and can happen in that respect. But I think, honestly, you'll probably end up with a greater and greater division of the type of agent that exists in the UK. So there will be the corporates who will just be okay. and as they always have been, always will be, no fireworks, no kind of, no fireworks, no explosions as such,
Yep.
whereby charge a decent fee, they do an
Steady
okay
Eddie
job.
does its
Yeah,
job.
and that will be okay for some people. But I think the second tier of estate agency, at whatever level, whether you're selling 100 grand houses or you're selling at 10, 20, 30 million quid, will be, would we call it self-employed? Let's call it agents with personal responsibility. Because it doesn't really matter whether they're employed or self-employed.
Yeah.
But those agents that have freedom to do their own thing, so whether it be door knocking, whether it be their own marketing, networking, local events and so on, but also, and this is the important thing, taking the majority of the fee. So whether they're employed by XYZ or they're self-employed on their own, or they're under EXP or Keller or TAUK.
So accountability in the role and
whatever. But rewarded properly, because I think that if you're on 70%, 60%, 50% of the entire fee, you have an incentive to do a job much, much better than if you're on 5 or 10% of that fee.
You're financially bought in at that point, aren't you? You're emotionally and financially bought in.
So you're going to be better, right? So that is better for you as an individual, because you can earn more, you can create a kind of focus on quality rather than quantity. So very much different to the kind of countrywide Connells kind of, volume, spice of heart kind of approach. But I think that your service approach then to your seller and your buyer, because you're earning more and perhaps you're doing less volume and earning more per transaction, the quality of service is going to be better. Yeah. So that's got to be good for the industry. That then helps that person get referrals and recommendations from that seller and buyer's friends and family, which means they don't have to spend as much money on marketing. They can also charge higher fees, so they can say, of course there's a guy up the road at 0.5%. I mean, if you want me to give you his number, I'm happy to do that, but I thought you were about kind of, outcomes and performance and being looked after properly, and that's what I'm going to do for you. But yeah, I'm 2%. How much money have you made on your house, by the way? I bought it in 1997. Oh wow, so you've made £430,000 in your house. I only want a tiny bit of it to look after you properly. Are you going to get the business, right? So I think the self-employed stroke employed agency approach, where the majority of the fee is retained by the individual agent, has to be the way ahead. And the reason I think that, A, it's happening, but B, it's the model in the United States, Canada, Australia, France, Germany, Italy, Spain,
there's
Greece.
a reason for that. And it works.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's I think that's the future. But don't worry, there'll always be room for shit agents.
We need them, don't we?
Well,
to make yourself look good somehow.
Someone's got to be the 0.5%er.
So where did we step last? So we were talking about the sort of a bit of an echo chamber in the industry in terms of voices and people's opinions on what good could look like, and we talked about how, as an industry, the bar could be raised probably by incentivising people very strongly on the amount of fee they can take home.
Yeah.
So, if you were going to start an estate agency today, I know you've got no appetite to do
Which
that.
I'm not. Yeah.
That's not your controversial bit. We've already had plenty of them.
Done that.
So, if you were to start one today and you were to sit there and go, do you know what? This industry, it's just crap.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and do something. What would you do? How would you do it?
What? If I was to start an estate agency rather than do something else outside the industry, I would, shock horror, open a branch, a public-facing branch,
actual branch
in a high street.
On a high street.
I would, and I would do that.
These are the same branches that you once said?
Many, I was going to say years ago, Ross, lives ago, I suggested that we don't need branches. But there is an exception, and the exception is where that high street branch is prominent and is seen as an advertising hoarding.
Okay.
So I think there's huge value in, let's say, a provincial high street. I don't mean like a big faceless town centre with 30 agents in it. Let me use Shenfield as an example. So Shenfield, where I live, which is a very, very busy high street, particularly, first thing in the morning when people are commuting on the train, Saturdays, Sundays, coffee, blah, blah, blah. Busy provincial high street where your brand then gets seen above the door on a constant basis. That is worth having a high street branch.
A billboard.
Yeah, it is, effectively. I mean, you've got to have a base, right? One where they're like you guys have. You're on a farm because farms are one of the types of product that you deal with, right? So it makes perfect sense. So I would start a branch, But what I would then do, rather than what I did in traditional estate agency, which is to have a branch per area, I would use the branch as a hub.
Yep.
And I would have a choice, a bit like you're doing actually, I think, which is you can come and be employed if you want, if you want a bit of comfort. I always a bit of a red flag though if someone wants big basic and a bit of comfort, because you think you're just going to sit on your arse.
Or do you want us to back you, or do you back yourself?
Yeah, but I think there is a place for that type of agent. But what I would encourage is those actually, whether they're employed or self-employed, notwithstanding IR35,
Yes.
being backing themselves on the basis of a bigger commission, as we've just said. And I would have a number of those individuals that then dealt with specific territories. So, Shenfield and Essex, which is part of Brentwood, I'd have someone come in and do Brentwood, I'd have someone do Billericay, I'd have someone do Hornchurch, someone do Upminster, and then I'd expand it. And then I think you'd find the extent to which that branch then gets diluted in terms of its, visibility. And then you might end up, let's say, in the county of Essex with 4 or 5 super branches and 10, 12, 15, 20 agents per branch. And all of a sudden, you've got a big, repeatable business, which has got a visible brand, effectively outdoor advertising. Technology, I think, has to play a part of that, although I'm definitely not a big fan of this whole kind of self-serve thing that the online estate agency sector was supposed to be kind of synonymous with. And paying those agents, as we said, a big slice of the fee. So I think that, to me, would be a very interesting model, which I guess, would we call it a hybrid? Probably would.
Technically, yes, you would, really. So, okay, so talk to us about those agents who would be coming on board into that then, because a lot of the people that we have watched this are people who are considering or doing self-employed agency.
Yeah.
Let's talk PR.
Yep.
What, as an individual agent who is master of their own destiny, they don't get paid a salary, they take 70% of their fee home, obviously as a running sort of income for the business rather than salary.
Yep.
What would you do? I mean, you're pretty good at it, you know what you're doing, don't you? Let's be honest. But as those who are not willing to be as controversial, perhaps not as comfortable with putting themselves into every environment where it's got a camera or a microphone, what would you do? How would you approach PR?
Well, you don't have to be controversial. I mean, I'm controversial just because, particularly as I've got older, I've just become less patient with people generally, I think. So
middle-aged and a little bit more.
I call out bullshit, I speak my mind, and, I don't want to be two-faced, really. PR is not about being controversial. Okay. You don't have to be, an Elon Musk, or a Richard Branson that roller skates behind a kind of moving bus. You don't have to do that type of stuff. That's stunt-like. But so I think that big brands need to have the perception of a brand awareness based on expertise and thought leadership. So whichever brand that is, if you've got a decent-sized brand in a estate agency in the UK somewhere, you've got to be doing that promotional stuff, but also the stuff that is content-led around thought leadership and expertise.
The authority and various bits and bobs like that.
Yeah, and research-led stuff that shows that you're an expert on the market, that you really understand the industry and so on. So that stuff I think is really important. But actually what local agents should be doing, social media. We did a poll recently that asked a whole bunch of questions of estate agents. And one of the questions we asked was, do you think social media is important as an estate agent? 24% of respondents said they didn't think social media was important at all. Which to me is, so surprising and so blinkered and naive. So social media, incredibly important in terms of getting out there, the whole personal brand thing, which I know people talk about a lot, is a kind of, a well-worn kind of mantra now. But PR, and I probably shouldn't say this really, because I don't want to talk myself out of future potential clients, but on what I would call...
Probably going about his business.
He's not going to wee up my leg, is he? Have you sent the dog to wee up my leg? Hello.
Good morning.
So what I would do is to have what's called a hyper-local approach. And what I mean by that is, as an agent that deals with a small part of, let's say, Aylesbury, if you're an agent in Aylesbury, you should be an expert, right? You should know house prices, rental prices, you should know what the price of your average property is, whether it's a 3-bed, a 4-bed, a 2-bed flat or whatever, versus national average. Are prices going up? How are transactions? What's
That's going
happening
to cost
in the
me
area?
money to find all that information
No,
out, though, isn't it?
it's not. It's
No?
not at all. No. So you can find out all sorts of information about your locality through Office of National Statistics, through the census, and just keeping your ear to the ground, really. But you can then create publicity ideas by way of something you send to your local newspaper. There are still local newspapers around, apparently. Or actually what's happened is a lot of these newspaper organisations have just become big kind of news websites now. They like Hearts Live, Essex Live, and so on. If you were to create a piece, let's say, that shows the most expensive street in Aylesbury, the most expensive home sold in Aylesbury in 2025, rental values in Aylesbury versus the average rental value in the UK, and actually they are going up at a higher rate.
Data.
So you can find that stuff out, a little bit of work, particularly if you haven't done it before. Anyway, you can then create a written piece based on your expertise with your specific local area, send it to those local outlets. Most of the time they will publish on the basis that they think it's readable, it's interesting. So that then ensures that Hearts Live, for instance, are publishing a piece that talks about property porn, as in cheapest, most expensive, or house prices might only be rising by 2%. But did you know in Aylesbury they're rising by 6% per annum? Why is that? Well, I can tell you, says Ross, it's because of all that regeneration that the council did 5 or 6 years ago.
That's now local knowledge.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right? So it becomes interesting. People like reading about
Relevant
property.
to the people who are there.
Yeah. So then what happens is you get your name in lights in terms of, Ross says, so it becomes a press article, which you can then recycle into social media. But also that journalist, then next time he's got a property query, guess who he rings?
And you do fall into a bit of a bucket on that basis, don't you? You do end up in a situation where once you are seen as a person who is willing and able to contribute, they tend to ask a bit more, don't they?
Yeah, and you don't need to do much. You could do one of those a month. And then it's probably almost as valuable when you recycle that into your own website blog or your own Instagram post or LinkedIn, Facebook or whatever, to say, we were quoted in Essex Live yesterday or Hearts Live, on our latest research that discloses
the authority
X or
there
Y.
is just great, isn't it?
Yeah.
It puts you as credible, doesn't it?
And then you say in the lounge, of course, when you're on a listing appointment and you're the 5th agent in, well, you can say, we're the local expert, right? And I can kind of demonstrate to you why we're the local expert. Hearts Live, I'm the guy they come to for property commentary. Oh, really? Yeah, let me show you. Yeah. Oh, right, okay. Not the other guys up the road. No, I don't think so, just us. And surely that's a conversion tool, isn't it?
Well, again, you become a trusted expert.
I'm giving you way too much here.
Well, a little bit, and I'm going to controversial. So we do controversial opinions. We say, give us a controversial opinion. Now, I think we've probably had a few of those already in the last mile and a half that we've done. So we won't do that. We won't do that. But I'm going to give you something controversial then.
Okay.
Aren't you in trouble?
Insofar as?
Well, AI does it all for me now.
What,
so
PR?
why do I need you?
Well, so our style of PR, I mean, you could get AI to write you a press release.
Yep.
Definitely you could do that. Who are you going to distribute it to?
Well, no, AI will tell me.
It won't. It won't tell you
Yet.
based on, well, yet, maybe. Maybe in the future it kind of will, but it'll have to go a long way to know the niche that you're trying to get a press release out to, because property is a massive spectrum, right? So there's sales, lettings, construction, conveyancing, mortgages, whatever. So you've got to land it in the right sector of journalists. Like estate agents, journalists are very, very transient. They move a lot. So you've also got to have a database that's up to date. So when Anna White moves from the Telegraph to the Evening Standard, which she did, you've got to know that. Because there's no point you sending it to Anna White at the Telegraph.co.uk. She ain't there anymore, right? So you've got to know that. But our style of PR is not just a promotional press release that says Chartwell Noble are fantastic, game-changing estate agents, and they're beating Savills and Knight Frank at every turn, which is apparently true, by the way.
So I've heard.
I'd heard that. It's about the creative idea that is very relevant to the audience that you're trying to get to as a business. That, I'm not sure AI will do that because it's contextual. You cannot digitise empathy. And a big part of what we do and a good PR agency does is to have empathy and context when it comes to saying to a client, okay, who's your audience? How do we get to them? What kind of creative ideas do we have backed up by research and data that a journalist and their editor will then want what they want themselves to publish on our behalf?
And you can feel that in the pieces. You can sense it, can't you?
So that joining of the dots, that human element, it's a bit like, does AI completely take over from estate agents? Are we going to end up robots going into people's lounges and listing homes? I mean, no, that's clearly not going to happen.
What did I hear the other day? The next thing in AI is people.
Yeah, no, it will be. And it's the balance between technology and people, isn't it? So it's, you want to use a person in an estate agency for advice, to meet them and look them in the eye and know that I think I can trust this guy. Yeah, that's good. As a shoulder to cry on, as someone that can maybe answer some very weird questions like, I'm getting divorced and that's why you're selling the house for me, Ross. Well, turns out my husband's, gone off around the world for 6 months, won't sign the contract. What do I do? Well, AI are not probably going to give you an answer to that, are they? So I think people, particularly when it comes to integrity, authenticity and trust, super important, both in estate agency and PR. But of course, AI and technology are going to have a part to play, but it's going to be a bit like just having an admin assistant that does the stuff that you want it to do without you having to ask them to do it.
Well, I think it was Toby Martin who was probably at this exact spot who referenced Sam Altman that said, well, AI is going to be great fun right up until the moment that it ends the world, so enjoy the journey.
Well, there is that. That's cheery, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah. But yeah. I think
Very
you're right.
Robot.
Very
Will Smith.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I threw out the AI thing because why wouldn't you? Everybody's talking about it. But frankly, it's got to back the human being rather than replace the human being, hasn't it? And
but
it can give you an idea, but it won't actually do the job.
But you remember, you and I are old enough to remember when the internet first kind of came to fruition, late 90s, when it was like all of a sudden it was a thing, 97, 98, 99, and then the whole millennium bug and so on. Lots of people said the internet will put most people out of a job, and it didn't. Actually, what it did was create millions and millions more. So I think AI is not a threat, apart from the kind of the end of the world thing, which obviously would be quite inconvenient. I think it's an opportunity, and I think it will create a whole load of jobs that we don't even know need to exist yet.
Agreed. Lovely. Good man. Russell Quirk, thank you very much.
Is this the bit where you push me into the canal?
Well, I mean, I can. It would be really popular, wouldn't it?
It would look good on TikTok.
Property industry, it'd be great.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you so much. And I think
that was
time
great.
for lunch, I think.
Yeah, indeed. I enjoyed that. Thanks very much.
Good man.